Well, once again, areas from the Florida Panhandle to the northeastern coast of Texas are closely watching the track of Hurricane George. It is over the Gulf of Mexico at the present time, and it could intensify before making landfall once again. Good morning and welcome to this edition of Weather Center. I'm Will Annan. We are closely monitoring the movement of Hurricane George. Bruce Edwards is now standing by in the Forecast Center for this update.
Thanks, Will, and good morning, everyone. We watch George as it raked the Florida Keys. Now it's moving on into the Gulf of Mexico. Where is its next stop? That is the big question upon the minds of everyone here at the Weather Channel, and of course everyone who resides along the Gulf Coast. Yesterday was the day, touchdown day in the Keys, as Hurricane George pounded the Florida Keys yesterday, downing trees and power lines. It destroyed 20 houseboats and floating homes. Winds of 105 miles an hour and heavy rains ripped through the area. A roaring storm surge sent waves smashing over the marina docks, flooding many roads, swamping many boats, and making things just rather messy. And it's still raining down in the Keys right now as we crank up the satellite picture. They're still catching some rain, so it'll be really later on today till they fully assess the damage caused by Hurricane George. But there's a satellite picture. There is the center of George right about there, as you can see it. And again, it's lost a little of its punch, so to speak, as far as the convective showing up on the satellite. Now here's the update, but we've got the latest figures in just now from the National Hurricane Center. And not a tremendous change in the overall scene as you see right here. Now, as of the 5 a.m. update, George was centered at 25.5 north, 84.5 west, or about 460 miles to the southeast of New Orleans, Louisiana. It still continues to move west-northwest at about 9 miles per hour. The maximum sustained winds are still holding at 105 miles per hour, makes it a Category 2 hurricane. We could see some strengthening, though, later today over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. We still have hurricane force winds extending well out from the center of the system. Latest central pressure, 974 millibars, no change from the earlier update. Where we do have a change is in regards to the watches and warnings. Now, tropical storm warnings have been discontinued for the west coast of Florida from north of Longboat Key northward. That's roughly in this area. This has been discontinued, the tropical storm warnings. We'll be updating this graphic, but from Longboat Key south through the Florida Keys and the west coast of Florida to Key Largo, tropical storm warning still remains in effect. So again, from Longboat Key north, those warnings have been discontinued, but from Longboat Key south through Key Largo, they still remain in effect at the present time. And hurricane watches still remain in effect from St. Marks, Florida, and all the way around the Gulf Coast to Morgan City, Louisiana. And we wouldn't be too surprising to see perhaps these watches extended farther west as time goes by. So we'll keep an eye on that situation for you. Still a little sliver of a tornado watch down here in Florida, but no reports of any severe weather over the last several hours, which is positive news here once again. But we'll continue to keep you updated on the situation. Joined now by Dr. Steve Lyons on this Saturday morning, up bright and early. And Dr. Lyons got a little bit of rest. George didn't rest, though. It raked through the Keys. Now it's into the Gulf. And we were looking at it and trying to see where is it going to be heading, and is it going to get any bigger?
That's right, and of course right now if you're in the Keys, be careful because there's still tropical storm force winds out there. 40 knot, that's about 45 mile an hour sustained winds in some locations just a few hours ago, so be very careful. But and here you can see some gusts along the coast, but the strongest wind is still down in here at the Keys, even though the hurricane circulation center is somewhere out in here. Yeah,
we haven't gotten any observations from the Keys obviously since then, but so again, still pretty squally there.
But it looks like it will continue on the track that it's going, which is basically to the west-northwest the next day or so. And you notice that the hurricane watches basically stop very close to the Texas coast. There's a pretty good reason for that, even though the surface flow is trying to push it generally toward the west or west-northwest. A very prominent upper-level trough is forecast to come into the picture off to the west here and keep it out of Texas. And if that materializes, we would expect it to come up here on this west-northwest track and then turn a little bit more northward. And right now, the New Orleans area is the key or the focal point for the landfall. But keep in mind, it's too early to tell that. And one of the reasons it probably is a good reason to make it a focal point is because it's a worst-case scenario. Okay. It's a very, very damaging situation to have it come up out of the southeast with the eye wall on the right right side relative to New Orleans.
Well, we look at the radar right now. There's still action over the west coast of Florida as the region is getting strafed with some rain, and down towards the Keys. Here's a little closer look at South Florida. And still from Key West, even over towards Marathon, still getting a pretty good surge of moisture here. And then you pick it up from Naples and Fort Myers and right up through Sarasota and Bradenton. We're still picking up more in the way of the wet weather. Now, as we look at it once again, we can see where we still have quite a concentration of convection right around the center, even though it's sort of lost a little of the outer stuffing, so to speak.
That is correct, Bruce. It started to look a little bit weak here, especially on the west side, as it entrained some dry air in there last night, but it's starting to come back here, and we're starting to get a very symmetric circulation. And it looks like it's not lost any intensity at all. Still 105-mile-an-hour hurricane. Could easily go to Category 3 before landfall.
All righty. Thank you, Dr. Steve Lyons. We'll keep an update on the situation and give you the latest information as it becomes available. You can check us out on the internet anytime you want the information you need at weather.com. Now let's go back to the studio and find out about the rest of the country and some nasty storms up in the dairy state of Wisconsin. And here's a homeboy, Weather Will Annan.
Thanks a lot, Bruce. Once again, we're looking at some turbulent weather this morning developing right around Green Bay, Wisconsin, up towards Escanaba, and getting back over towards the central part of the central Wisconsin itself. And once again, we'll be talking about that and looking at, once again, some hefty weather developing as well, located right around the northeastern sections of lower Michigan, too. By the way, this weather center this go-around is sponsored by TWA. I'll show you what else is going on temperature-wise. A very muggy morning as far north as Green Bay and Minneapolis. Another day of severe weather is likely now from southern Minnesota into central and southern Wisconsin. So Green Bay all the way down towards the Fox Valley to around Rochester, Minnesota. Could be looking at some more strong storms as the day progresses. Look at the muggy weather this morning. We are looking at temperatures in the 70s and lower 80s as far south as the Gulf Coast, as far north as Des Moines, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, and again the cooler conditions throughout New England and throughout much of the Pacific Northwest. We'll take a look at what's happening now as far as radar. You can see the explosive developing storms throughout the Midwest right now. We're going to take you into the Great Lakes states, show you one batch redeveloping south of the Twin Cities, and this batch rolling through Green Bay at the present time, where there are currently some watches in effect. And the watches are in effect because of this. Take a look at some of these mean storms right now, rolling right through Brown County itself. It looks like the region right around Green Bay and just...
Good morning. It's time now for Storm Watch. Well, Hurricane George continues to churn across the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and with that we'll likely see some locally heavy rain and still some flooding problems for portions of western Florida. At the same time, though, this morning we've been tracking some vicious thunderstorms developing in the upper Midwest, and we'll say more about that coming up in just a moment. First of all, though, it's time for your tropical update, and we've had a very, very unusually active weather pattern for the tropics. Now, this is the first time since the latter part of the 1800s that we have had 4 hurricanes to talk about at the same time. Of course, we have Hurricane George, which continues to plague portions of the eastern Gulf. Then we have Ivan and Karl. And then farther upstream from that, we have Hurricane Jeanne. So 4 hurricanes at one time. Of course, though, the biggest weather story continues to be Hurricane George, which continues to more or less hold its own. Right now, it's a very strong Category 2 hurricane, packing winds of 105 miles per hour. Right now, it's roughly centered about 460 miles southeast of New Orleans, and it continues to move off towards the west-northwest. Now, I guess the big question at this particular point in time is where will it be going from this point? Well, It's still rather uncertain, but we do expect more or less it to continue on that west-northwest, perhaps kind of a northwesterly track for the next 24 hours or so. And at that rate, the greatest strike probability will be somewhere across the extreme western Florida panhandle, perhaps coastal regions of Mississippi or Alabama, and back over towards coastal regions of Louisiana. Now again, we can't say with any definite certainty as to where it could be making its secondary landfall, but probably somewhere in this zone. This is probably the best likelihood, somewhere within this zone. So again, if you're a resident along the Gulf coastal states, definitely take the necessary precautions and preparations just in case the hurricane does head in your general direction. Now at this point, hurricane watches continue in effect from St. Mark's in Florida and extending westbound all the way over towards Morgan City in Louisiana. And when we talk about hurricane watches, that means there is the possibility of hurricane-like conditions, hurricane force winds perhaps, sometime within the next 36 hours or so. So again, there is a chance of the weather definitely could be going downhill around this general area. So again, make the necessary preparations and precautions just in case the hurricane does head in your direction. Now at this point, from our satellite perspective, it still looks very impressive, although a little bit more compact than what it was yesterday. We have been seeing some signs of some drier air getting entrained with the hurricane, but still a very impressive outflow, very good upper level dynamics, very good wind profile aloft, and still some very warm waters throughout this region. So with that in mind, conditions do look favorable for some further strengthening. We're still watching these outer rain bands working their way across southwestern Florida, and that could perhaps cause some localized flooding for southwestern Florida. So from residents from Marco Island and Naples all the way over towards Tampa Bay, watch out for the chance for some locally heavy rainfall. Now again, besides Hurricane George, though, we have Hurricane Karl. This one packing winds of 85 miles per hour, right now not posing a threat to any land areas. Hurricane Ivan, though, right now with winds of 90 miles per hour, and maybe in the next day or so, we might see some problems eventually developing around the Azores. Hurricane Jeanne, though, right now with winds of 80 miles per hour, and this one generally kind of curving off towards the north, maybe eventually more towards the northeast, and it too not posing any major threat to any land areas. Here's another satellite perspective of Jeanne. Again, it continues to work its way off towards the northwest. Now, stateside, we've had some weather headaches of our own. We have this very complex low-pressure system that continues to get better organized across the Midwest. And already, we've had some severe weather popping up in Minnesota and Wisconsin and lower Michigan. We've had some reports of downed trees and power lines and some large hail. And again this afternoon, watching out for some rough weather around Green Bay and around Minneapolis. Stay tuned. A complete update on Hurricane George coming straight up. Unexpected weather can really mess up your day, and preparing people for it is our business. Business is good.
Got crud? Get Zud, the heavy-duty scrub, and crud's gone. Liquid Zud heavy-duty cleanser dissolves rust, corrosion, soap scum, almost any crud. At home, on your boat, almost anywhere. Got crud? Get Zud.
Long live Rome, and on to victory.
There are times when you can't afford to miss a message.
Brutus!
When you get Skyward Plus from SkyTel, you get the message every time, guaranteed.
Hey, pull me back. Oh, that feels pretty good. What's this stuff?